Welcome to Digital Two-Foot Traffic. I am Kevin Shi.
And I am Scott Jensen. We are digital marketers with massive experience in running brick and mortar stores.
Join us each episode as we explore the latest digital marketing trends and uncover strategies from the best in the industry. Hi, welcome to another episode of Digital Two-Foot Traffic. I'm your host, Kevin Shi. I'm here still in Bali. And Scott is not available today, so it's just me. I have a very special guest today. Actually, I bumped into him in Bali. We met a few years ago, and he's a very interesting and smart friend of mine. And he's in the blockchain area. So we're very glad to have him on our show. I'd like to introduce Mazi. Mazi, can you introduce yourself? Your last name is Sadri, right?
Yeah, of course, Maziar Sadri. My full name is Maziar Sadri, but I go with Mazi with all of our friends.
Okay.
Mr. Shi, thank you for having me on. Yes, as Kevin said, we met in the mountains in Tahoe, in California, a few years ago. So from the mountains to the beaches, this is where our digital world takes us, and I'm very, very happy about that.
And he's another friend of Sam. So last time we had a guest, Oswald Yao. He's another Sam's friend. So Sam is like a networker. He brings people to from different walks of life, to me, and we meet. But Mazi, tell me something about your background and what you do. I remember you're into mechanical engineering and all that, and you have products, and now you moved into the blockchain space, and there's a reason because of that. Can you describe briefly what you do?
Yeah, so I've been in the software space since I was about 15. I started working on kind of background channels and building communities on AOL when I was 15. I don't know if everybody remembers the discs that you used to get. I don't know if they send the CDs in Hong Kong the same way that they did in the US to kind of blast their network pre-internet. But I was fortunate enough to grow up in Silicon Valley and kind of see a lot of the movements, moved to the finance side for a while, and then moved back after going to graduate school into marketing and product management. And I worked at Yahoo kind of when the company was at the tops, build the mail and communications channels for them. And I always like large-scale impact. So after working for a few years for myself on smaller projects, one of the larger ones being an app development company, I saw some of the applications of larger scale impact and kind of the general changes that are going to come with blockchain technology. And I was excited to kind of see the changes that are going to come, and I wanted to be a part of it. In the same way that I saw the internet happening in the early 2000s, I saw that the same things are going to happen within this industry. But I saw that it was very, very early and nascent, so nobody was really bringing this technology to the average user. Everybody was building infrastructure and things like that. So I was excited to bring this to, I want to say, a blockchain for your mom or for our mom. And then that applies to mom and pop stores as well, which I think is a bigger part of your audience, Kevin. So I think even though some of this technology is still a little bit early for everybody in the space, it's important for everybody to be aware. I think about it and talk about it like a sea change. You're standing somewhere. I've been in a bar. I know you went on a large trek in Ireland a few years ago. So I was in a pub in the UK a few years ago, and this pub is amazing because they have a space where it's dry around it, but if you sit there for a long time throughout the day, the tide comes in, and after 4 or 5 hours, you're surrounded by water. You can't get out.
This is in England.
Yes, it is in England. So
there's a beach in England. I didn't know that.
But they're crappy, terrible. Well, I don't want to insult.
They have, but they're not. It's not Bali. It's not Bali, right?
Yes, it's not like the Bali beaches, but they do have beaches that are sufficient. But I love this bar because if you spend enough time, you don't notice the tide coming up, but you're there for about 4 or 5 hours, and then afterwards you realize that you're sitting in the middle of water and you have to get out of your shoes to walk out. So sea change, internet, blockchain is all in the same way. We could think about the ways that it doesn't affect us, but these things kind of come up around us, and if we don't know about them, we're soon either drowning or we're standing in the middle of water. So it's important for us all to know.
I totally agree with you. You don't really see the changes minutes by minutes, day by day. But if you step back and you talk to people far away and you need to think about these things, then you really realize the change. People are really, there's a saying, people overestimate how much change they can make in a week or 2 weeks. But they always underestimate how much change they can make in a year or 2 years. So you got to be prepared, and you got to think long term. If you don't think long term, that's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to step back, and a lot of times it's easy to think, oh, this doesn't apply to me. A few years ago, you could think, oh, I don't need a website for my business. I don't need a Facebook page for my business.
Yeah.
I don't need to do any digital advertising. I have yellow pages. Yeah. I have foot traffic into my store.
Step back for a minute. I wanted to know how you became, like, were doing the yoga mat before, like electrical engineering and engineering of products, and you switched to blockchain because it's pretty diverse, right? And I remember you telling me a story. It's because you were always trying to apply something to your yoga mat business, and you found out that was a business in itself. So that's how you diverged. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so we were learning we were doing a lot of machine learning. So we had a smart yoga mat business that we still have going on that allows people to kind of control their alignment and their balance on while they're doing their asana practice. And as a part of that, we had to do a lot of machine learning. So machine learning is basically, it's another form of artificial intelligence. It basically allows a machine to learn how to learn. That's the easiest way that I could explain it. So within utilizing that technology, we expanded into some of the other people who are doing this, and we saw some of this application in the blockchain space. Through that, I also learned about the ICO process that's going on, and because we're looking to do fundraising for that business, and we saw a lot of businesses that are kind of coming in and raising funding for different elements of different things that are happening. So I saw a larger growth in the blockchain space. And at the time, blockchain to me was cryptocurrency. Blockchain to me was Bitcoin. So I didn't really think about it beyond that. Yeah, Bitcoin is what started it all. And, if we ask 9 out of 10 people on the street, what they're aware of is they're like, oh, blockchain or cryptocurrency is very, very volatile. It's Bitcoin. I don't understand it. I don't need it. I step away from it. But one of the main things that I tell people is that, Facebook is not the same as the Facebook stock. The Facebook, and this is the same way that I think about cryptocurrency. We don't utilize, the stock market on our everyday basis, but we use many, many companies that are in there.
Exactly.
What percent, Kevin, you probably know this better than I do, but, I wonder what percentage of people that are investors in the stock market are also users of a product. Probably less than 1% of people that use products in the S&P 500 are actually investors into them. Actually, and it's the same way.
The funny story is I'm a very forgetful person. So since the iPhone 3, I have lost or destroyed at least over 32 to 35 Apple iPhones, right? And the calculation goes, if I didn't buy an iPhone when I lose it or destroyed it, and I bought something cheap, and I use that money to invest in the Apple stock, I would have at least $250,000 right now, US. So that's the relationship I can think of. But going on seriously, it's good how you, as an entrepreneur, switch from the yoga mat, which is still a good business, and you guys are just putting it on hold for a while and doing the trend, because I know many entrepreneurs, what they originally plan out to do and what they succeed at is usually sometimes different. You don't try to force your idea into the market. You get feedback from the market and you flow from it.
Absolutely.
What's your
even within the business that we're doing now, we've started building some elements of our business, and some tool sets that we built within our business are becoming of much more use for everybody. Okay. An example of that, I know, do you use Slack, or are you familiar?
I am going to use Slack. Everybody is forcing me to use Slack.
Similar to it's actually valued at about $5 billion now in the market.
Okay.
And Slack actually started as a communication tool for another game that the company was building. But they saw that this was much, much more valuable, and so they switched and pivoted everything into that product. In the same way that we've done this with some of our elements of our business. And that, I don't want to jump into that yet. I kind of want to talk a little bit about some of the iteration, if it's okay with you,
please,
of the blockchain space. And then I want to talk about kind of what we're doing in our business to kind of help the everyday store and the kind of the smaller people. Okay. So we talked about the fact, the blockchain is not the same as the cryptocurrency market. So what is blockchain? I mean, I kind of want to cover that with the audience. We're all familiar with the internet. Blockchain, in some ways, we could think about it in the very easiest way as a decentralized element of the internet. So it's a public ledger which transactions are made. It could be in Bitcoin, it could be in another cryptocurrency that are recorded chronologically and publicly. So what happens is that within that, there's accountability. Everybody could see a certain move that I make or you make because it's recorded and it's kept on all of our computers. There's transparency because we could see when that exactly happened.
Yeah.
And then there's a lack of central control. So one entity cannot go and change this. So if you and I have made a transaction, for example, that's recorded on 1,000 or 100,000 machines, and it's one of the best analogies that I heard is that transaction gets to be trapped like a fly in amber.
Fly in amber, sorry?
Yeah, so if you remember maybe a piece of amber, the way that amber works is that every layer of that amber that comes on top basically traps whatever is inside even more and more.
Okay.
Or, we could think about it like, I don't know if you have gobstoppers in Hong Kong.
Okay.
These are pieces of gum that basically there's a ball that's another layer that's built on top and on top. So you could always peel this, or like an onion also. You kind of peel to the lowest level, and the newest level comes on top of it. So we never lose what's going to happen.
But
so, thinking about this, sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, so for developing countries or unstable country, that makes sense. But you're talking about America or Hong Kong. Doesn't the government tracks a lot of good records? I mean, if I buy a piece of land, it's in the land registry in the government, right?
I don't know if you've had to try to go and kind of reclaim registry in. I don't know how it is in Hong Kong, but it's in the U.S. It's very difficult. And also, a lot of our info is not just with the government. So a great example of this is actually Cambridge Analytica. If we remember kind of the Facebook kind of big fiasco of last year, what happened with Cambridge Analytica data is that Facebook was able to see that at some point a company extracted data from their service.
Okay.
But beyond that, they had no idea this data that was extracted, where it went.
Okay.
It could have been sold 50 other times afterwards, and they completely lose track of it.
Okay.
With technology similar to ours, and with technology within blockchain, if that information is transferred out, there's a record when that's transferred out. There's a record of where it goes.
What's the greatest application of Bitcoin for entrepreneurs or particularly brick and mortar companies? I've heard different stories. I'd like to share you mine later, but I want to hear what you think right now.
So I think in terms of Bitcoin is a store of value like gold. I don't think there's applications much beyond that. And that's the blockchain 1.0 versus 2.0 and 3.0 talking about. So why don't you fill me in? I remember actually one time you posted that you'd gotten paid in Bitcoin in one of your businesses. So I don't remember what part that was in the market. I don't know if that was in the 19,000s or the 6,000s.
So I invested in my friend. And there's a clause where, should I say, if I regret it, it can just be a loan, which is very bad on my part. But I did regret it at the end, so I asked him to pay me back. And he managed the ICO. Very good for him. And he paid me back.
Was it a successful ICO?
It was, well, he raised a few million US, which is pretty good because he only started the company a few years ago, like 2 years ago, right? So he ICO'd. It's a house platform right now. This is a property platform in China. But anyways, he paid me back in Bitcoin. And then he asked me, because I was so grateful, he asked me not to sell it. And I became obsessed with Bitcoin. I was looking at it every day, in the morning, in the afternoon, at night. And then it keeps on dropping, and I just, forget it. I just because I don't see any utility to it, right? But anyways.
Wait. And then you sold it low? Is that what you did?
I bought it at, I received it at around 12,000, and I sold it at 9,500. So it's all right. I mean.
Would you do this? Would you do the same thing with your stock portfolio?
No,
Kevin?
because they pay a dividend. I don't buy anything, even Facebook. I don't buy anything that doesn't pay me shit. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, really? That's interesting. Most technology. See, it's funny. I grew up in Silicon Valley, and I have to say, most of my portfolio is tech. Yeah. And most of my portfolio does not. I think me and you, Mazi, are very different. Although we're good friends, I like you a lot. I think you like me too. But me and you have very different principle of life. I like if I invest in something, the number one thing has to be I trust that person that he won't fuck me. He won't screw me. Then I look at the business. All right. For you, it's the other way around, or you don't even look at that person, right? You just see if that business is. Well, I do look at the person, but I also want to. I do take risks on a business at some time.
And the other thing is, I buy stuff. I buy stuff for dividends. I mean, or even if you don't pay me. Is there enough collateral when I sell off your assets? Can I get my money back? Right? That's why I look, right? I guess I don't know because of my background. I'm in properties and all that. That's why we're different, right? So,
Of course, and I mean, contrasting opinions are required. I mean, they make
yeah,
us both a better person, and in some ways,
yeah.
yeah, I actually value that very much. And in some ways, I need to come.
Uh,
I would say that we both need to come more towards the center in some ways, because there's elements that make sense of different types of risk and reward that
yeah.
are going to be
But
useful for us.
tell me more about blockchain. How is that used for everyday like operators, entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so let's move on. So we talked about that. So Bitcoin, which was basically blockchain 1.0, is a store of value. Then the 2.0, which is Ethereum, introduced smart contracts. So what smart contracts are is they basically allow accountability in transactions. So what a smart contract is that with Bitcoin, you and I can make an agreement that I say, Kevin, I'm going to send you 5 Bitcoin, and within that, you're going to basically either do a service for me or you're going to send me something of a good bad. But within that, there's no agreement beyond kind of my word and your word, or you and I go to a centralized authority like the government and make a contract of it. With Ethereum, what was introduced was actually a contract that's built within that transaction. So within me sending you something, we can actually have that built in. So within a digital currency, for example, that's how an ICO works. I will send you a certain number of Ethereum, and then you will send me a certain number of ERC20 tokens back, which are basically a guarantee of whatever ICO that you're going to build. Or on the other side, that could be, you could send me some digital assets that you have, or you could even be a percentage of a property. So we could build that into our contract. So that
Yes, go on.
So that allows a large applicability of basically processes that can help everyday businesses, because in the same ways that, for example, you and I, like, let's say for brick and mortar, there's a lot of, like, I know that you're very big in the storage business, and I know a lot of people do things like eBay and Etsy businesses off storage. So within those, obviously, there's always a central entity such as Etsy and eBay that you're paying a large percentage to. Basically, why are we doing that? Because they bring trust and accountability into it.
Yeah.
So that trust and accountability can be moved to a contract between us throughout something that's recorded on both of our machines and 10 more machines. That could be done faster, it could be done more efficiently, and most importantly, it could be done a lot cheaper. I think eBay fees could be about 10 to 15% at times. So if we take that between the two of us, and if there is rent and things like that to be paid to use the networks, but it's going to be much, much cheaper.
It's a new generation of coins getting cheaper and cheaper for transaction and faster.
Absolutely. So it's funny that you say that. So that's where the problems with the 2.0 Ethereum come from, and that's where there's the new technologies that are basically things like EOS, Cardano, Tron, and the third generation of networks that are coming up. So even though Ethereum was a huge move forward, the way Ethereum works is that the people that use the network pay something called gas, which is the tax on the network. It's basically what we pay to use the network. And the number of transactions that could be done on the network are very, very few. So what could happen is that when you and I need to make a transaction, I not only pay you, but I pay a little bit. Let's say it could be from anywhere from 50 cents to, depending on the busyness of the network, it could be $30 and the complexity of our transaction to use that. Now, that's okay when it's something between you and I that's happening. But when we think about something that's a larger decentralized application, so for example, if we're building a decentralized Instagram, which is something that you would use, or Yelp. I don't know, is there an equivalent of Yelp that is big in Hong Kong?
Yep.
Okay.
It's called Open Rice.
Think about, what is it called?
Open Rice for restaurants.
Open Rice. Okay. Okay, yeah. So let's think about every time that, right now with Ethereum, every time that you want to go ahead and write a review, or even rate a review, you would have to pay a little bit of tax on the network. So that kind of sucks, to be honest, not only just because you have to pay a little bit of money, but it creates friction in the process. If I have to stop and think about having to pay 2 cents every time I do something, that's not going to be very, very easy. And this is kind of some of the things that brought me passion into the business, to be able to change that and to make it a little bit more easy. So we figured, even though I like a lot of the technology that's happening, for it to be usable for the everyday person, it needs to be as easy or easier than the processes that are happening right now. So we need to remove some of those things like transaction costs and the speed of the network to make it, and we need to make products that are very, very easy to use as well. So that goes into
the thing I heard about Bitcoin and all that is when, how you said the smart contract and everything is quite expensive, the transaction fee, But with the smart contract and Ethereum, and the next generation is going to bring everything much cheaper and cheaper, right?
Absolutely. So the number of transactions are increasing. The price of transactions are going down, and the TPS, which is the transactions per second on network, are coming down.
So I hear from a few people, this is what's going to happen. Most nearest future applicability, Bitcoin blockchain is going to be matched with AI and make everything very, very efficient. For example, if I'm in a rush to go to the airport, my self-driving car can actually pay the guy in front 1.1 Bitcoin just to move away so I can go further, right? Before, that transaction takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, not money, a lot of effort, and the recording is too tedious that you cannot do it.
Right. But it's not autonomous.
Yeah, it's not autonomous.
It's not autonomous, this is
yeah, but with Bitcoin,
and everything
just,
like that is...
Yeah, they can just talk, I don't know, Wi-Fi, whatever, and hey, move over, I'll pay you 1.1 Bitcoin. And with smart contract or Ethereum, it's already done.
So this is the interesting thing that's happening, by the way. I have to say, this is going to be beyond beyond Ethereum. So this is some of the work that we're doing with things like Unification. Yeah. So for that to happen, Kevin, Ashley, to have all the transactions happen publicly takes a lot of data and is not efficient. But for you to make that transaction happen with that other car, what needs to happen is that data doesn't need to be recorded publicly.
No.
But your desire and your intent...
Smart contract,
Right, your desire and intent to be able to pay, let's say, up to 0.1 Ether for that person to move, that needs to be recorded automatically.
So another thing is just say if I own a self-storage or I own a hotel room nearby, right? And I can set up AI and I can scan like an Uber. I found out there's a cleaner next door, right? Cleaning another hotel or cleaning another self-storage, and automatically my machine would say, hey, since you're nearby anyways and you have extra time, you come over, you clean my place, we'll give you 40% off the market price. They would probably do it because
you've already said that intent. So the way actually, this is funny, Kevin. You're actually going into some of the things that we're doing with Unification, which is that we're building for these businesses. So we talked about everything being public. What needs to happen is every microtransaction of yours does not need to be recorded publicly, but your intent to be able to hire a cleaner for that much, or your intent to be able to move that car, or your intent to, for example, if you have an empty storage unit in your space and to be able to sell it below market, that should be recorded. So the way that we are doing
very,
this is
very, very efficient. All the inefficiencies should be squeezed.
And to make that efficient, by the way, we are combining the activity that happens on network with off network. And there's two technologies and terms for this is side chains and generalized state channels. So what we're doing is, Kevin, we're recording a contract with you to say that you want all these things to happen. That happens on the network. So that is public, that you have these intents. But then the microtransactions that happen between you and that cleaner, or happen between you and that Uber network. And that we are running on a private side chain or private state channel.
But that chain is still irreversible, right? So I can't.
It is irreversible.
So I can't say, oh, I didn't mean it, I'm not going to pay you.
No,
I can't say that, right?
Because your intent is on the network, and on top of that, we are verifying your activity every day with a decrypted hash. So every day or in a regular interval, we say that, okay, let's say 25 micro interactions or micro transactions happened based on your smart contract on a daily basis. We have, let's say, one line of code that's going to encrypt and say that these are the 25 things that happened that could be accessed later on that private state channel. So what's happening is that all your activity is still recorded, but it's recorded in a much more efficient manner that doesn't need to get on the blockchain on every time. And that's kind of
saves money.
Not only saves money, but it saves time. And, blockchain in some ways is a ledger or a database. So in some ways, we don't need to have every recording of every microtransaction happen on there. But we need to know the larger intent and the larger contracts that are happening between people that are going to happen on there. So it's funny that we talked about building tools versus building kind of the larger business. When we started building Unification, which is the project that I'm working on with the Unification Foundation, we built this combination of on-chain and off-chain activity as a tool for us to make things more efficient.
Yeah.
But then we saw that many businesses actually need this service. So this is kind of like the things like within self-storage, or for people that are especially running online apps or enterprises that are between, let's say, 100, 200,000 users to 2 million users. There's a large room for them to be able to use these channels. So, an example that I would give you right now is, for example, are you familiar with the company 23andMe? Have
yes,
you heard of them?
I have my genes recorded with them.
Okay, awesome. I do too. I did it a couple of years ago. So I don't know if you saw in the news, but they just made an agreement with GlaxoSmithKline, which is a huge pharma company,
okay.
To be able to do a data exchange for about $300 million of their users. So, this is, and then that's one thing. And then a few years ago, I remember I was thinking about this, things in the brick and mortar space. I remember that Starbucks bought Panera in the US, and then also FedEx bought Kinko's in the US. Part of this is to be able to add brick and mortar into their activity, but also part of this is that because they have very, very matching user bases. There's a complementary user base between these two. I wouldn't be surprised if eBay looks into something that is, once their business gets a little bit more mature, into something that is on the brick and mortar side, so they could kind of help as well with this side. So what we're allowing people to do is to basically build these partnerships and these data exchanges between them very, very easily without having to do these large transactions. Because an everyday mom and pop business, if you have 10 shops, it's hard for you to do a merger and acquisition.
Yeah. So can you talk about what your company does? Like maybe like the data, how you guys assist small, medium company that that has a lot of data they can't sell, and how that blockchain plays in part of it.
Yeah, of course, I want to do that a little bit more. I was actually just talking to our core developer team about this and going through some of the issues and kind of things that we're solving. So with Unification, what we want to do is basically bring blockchain to your mom and to the mom and pops. So we have three elements of what we're doing. We have basically what we're calling a protocol, pathway, and platform. So the protocol is basically an element to allow people to be able to launch smart contracts that are very, very easy and it's templatized in a way that small businesses can use to exchange data with other people and other businesses that are like them without having to do a lot of coding. Currently, when you have to do some smart contracts that we spoke about before, you have to not only pay somebody to develop it, but then you have to wait and take some time to audit it for a while as well. So we automate all that and we allow somebody to basically deploy a smart contract that is done for them basically within a matter of days. So some of the earlier things that we talked about as well, businesses want to be able to, for example, like self-storage, it's useful for a business to be able to take crypto payment. So what we want to allow people to do is allow them to take crypto payment gateways, whether it be Bitcoin or Ether or any other type of token, as a part of their business. People have that and they want to spend it, and it's easier for you and it removes friction. If you are the first person in that industry to be able to take Bitcoin or be able to take any kind of cryptocurrency, it's going to put you much ahead. I know there was a Korean restaurant in my neighborhood. It was the first one that took Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash. I saw them on the news, and so that's an interesting thing. This is a small kind of mom and pop shop among 10 other Korean restaurants, because in this neighborhood there was a big cluster of them. And then these guys, just because they did that, they were on the news. They got on Yelp, like on a trending basis, and it got them a lot of business. And then that's just like the PR side of it. But then there is the practical side that it puts you ahead as well, and it puts you ahead of this sea change that we're talking about. In the beginning we were talking about the example of the bar, where you sit there and the water fills up around you. In this example, and you're kind of building your boat at the time that's coming, or you're putting your bigger shoes, your boots at the time that it's coming, so you're ahead of it. And then the third part, which is really interesting, is that once people have these things incorporated, once they've done data exchanges with their partners, because we standardize this data, we could allow this to be sold in a much, much better way, in a much, much higher value than it would be if it's alone. So going back to small businesses typically have data that's around, let's say, hundreds of thousands of users max, or let's say even in the 1 or 2 million. Right now, for you to be able to sell your data, if it's under 20 million users, there's not much value that you could get from it. People are not going to pay that much just because people are not interested on the other side to take that data and standardize it in a larger format. And then what we do is we combine that data, auto-standardize it, and combine it with other sources to make that really, really useful. So I think we hit on some examples earlier on in terms of pharma research, and then we talked about Starbucks buying Panera, which is That's one example where they bought it, and they actually shut a lot of the Panera stores down afterwards, but they bought it because the value of that user is very, very interesting with them. And then we're probably going to see more of that going forward with businesses buying other elements of data that's useful for them. Now, as a small business, you're not always in a place to be in a lot of acquisitions, but what you can do is you can build those same data exchanges via Unification and via Blockchain 3.0 that businesses are building by doing these larger acquisitions. And then I love the autonomous aspects that you were talking about as well. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more? You mentioned that to me in terms of, if there's excess inventory for your business, or if there's excess inventory in businesses that service your business, for example, cleaners that are around, they could come over. That was really, really mind-blowing to me. I would like to hear that.
Is that practical already? Is just what I was saying about like surfacing like nearby surplus or available service via smart contracts? Is that available to small medium price enterprise, or is that just something that works in theory?
To be very, very frank, that's not available yet. That's something that's coming and everybody's building. But it's not so much further in the future. So it's a matter of getting these different networks online, and that's what we're trying to do. Because right now that person that runs that cleaning business doesn't have these capabilities to build these smart contracts. The person that runs a hotel that has excess inventory doesn't have the capability to run these smart contracts because they have to go and hire somebody to build each one, and then they have to modify it each time. With machine learning, the things that we talked about, and with automatically deployed smart contracts, you could go ahead and do these things almost automatically in the same way that, for example, you change your menu or your schedule. So that I anticipate to see probably about 1 year to 18 months down the line. And we hope to bring us a lot of that with Unification. So the smart contracts that we're starting with Unification are much more simple based. They're to allow data exchange with your partners and to allow you to sell data to larger data consumers and also to package your data with other people.
How much would a small and medium price enterprise have to pay your company to do this? And how long?
So we're still exploring those models. For them to onboard with us, there's not a fee that they need to pay. They could utilize they could utilize it because we want people to be in this ecosystem. It's valuable to us, and it's valuable for them to be to have some of these capabilities, and it's valuable to us to build a bigger ecosystem. When there's people utilizing our network, it's useful for them. It's like when we think about how much do you pay to do a Google search. You don't pay much, but obviously there's elements of it that once they grew to a certain amount, it made sense for them to utilize. Now, if a small business starts to do much larger data exchanges, there is an element of that data exchange that we will charge them to run that service for them. But this is going to be on larger scales, and for smaller ones, we're not going to charge. We want to basically facilitate that because we want them to start taking it.
Let me stop you for a minute. If I'm a small owner of an app or business and I have a lot of data, what's the pain point now? Like, if I didn't use your thing and I want to sell my data, which the customer authorized me to do, what's the pain point I have now, and what's the difference after I use your platform?
Okay, so let's talk about your business. So have you actually ever thought about or looked into selling the data or even exchanging it?
Exchanging, yes. Selling, no.
Okay, and how has it gone? How did that process go for you?
It's been okay, but the feedback has not been good. I mean, we can't really utilize it to the max. Let's just say that. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the thing. So until you're a larger player, let's say about 20 million, depending on the quality and the type of your data, between 5 to 20 million users on your data, it's very, very hard for you to monetize your data because it's a big step for you to standardize the data that you have, especially if it's an online business, and to be able to combine it with other sources. Because let's say a data consumer on the other side is not interested in buying smaller pockets. They're interested in buying small audiences and intents on a larger side. So what we are doing is that we are building automatic standardization into that data process. So your data is automatically combined.
It's worth more.
Of course, it's worth more. So what we've seen in tests, Kevin, is that there's a number called CPM, which is what you get paid per 1,000 pieces of data that you sell. What we've seen is that we could raise that from about $1 CPM on some businesses to up to $30 CPM on some businesses.
30 times.
Yeah. Yeah, 30 times. And even in some small cases, like I would say this is not usual, but in some cases that are pharma related or health related, it could be up to 50 times because
Wow.
people are willing to pay so much more for that. Now, when you have a small data set, go ahead, sorry.
May I ask you why is it?
Of course. So when you have a small data set, somebody that's looking to buy that is not interested in taking and standardizing and utilizing that themselves. So what we do is we will allow your data to automatically be combined not only with other people that have the similar data, but other people that have complementary data with yours. So I'll give you an example. Let's think about Stanford Research Hospital is looking for data for people that have a certain level of activity.
Okay.
So let's say they run a certain amount. Not only do they run a certain amount, they want to know that they've been exposed to a certain type of, let's say, fauna. So they know that they visited Bali, for example, that we just both happen to be in. And then we want to know that this person makes 100K or more a year. So in that case, their Mint data plus their Strava, which captures their running data, plus their GPS data would be combined. Now, they're looking for these three pieces combined. So you, as an owner of one of these businesses, are not going to have all those three pieces. So your data is not as valuable to them. And then they don't want to buy and triangulate this data because that's a hard work for them to do. And they don't have the specialization to make that happen. So what we're doing is we're automatically making that happen for different packages that we know that are valuable. So Stanford is willing to pay $500, for example, per research user. But you right now, and this is actually typical, you could sell your data right now for about $1 per user. But if we can combine that to find a subset of that data that is worth $500, and we're combining it from 3 users, let's say that money gets divided between 3 users and a small amount of it for our network, and then everybody rates a lot. So the really interesting part about this, but going back to users and not just the operators, is so Stanford takes this data within Unification, within our network. Stanford actually pays those users back a little bit of money as well because that user has agreed to share their data. So your users agree to share their data and they earn a small amount of that back. But the most interesting thing and the thing that makes me really, really happy and proud about this work is not the money that the end user is going to make. But Stanford, let's say, does some research and finds a new drug that could help you, the person that participated in that study. They could actually utilize within our system a method which we call full cycle revolution to come back and message and give you that specific data set or that specific report or invite you into that pharma trial. So the way advertising is currently done is typically on a 90-day cookie, which means that if I buy an audience from you, I don't have access to that audience after 90 days because it's wiped and it's gone. But going back into some of the blockchain tech that we were talking about, we, if people are agreed, can utilize and keep that data forever. So 2 years down the line, we could go back into it. So we could essentially cut off the time from, let's say, a research to a drug being in testing for between 2 to 7 years, which is revolutionary if that happens. So I'm very, very excited about some of those elements. Now that's one larger example, but there's many, many different examples that we could think about.
So how is this played with the blockchain? How is blockchain enabling this? I mean, can you combine these data without using blockchain, and how is blockchain using the difference?
Theoretically, you can do many, many of the things that happen off of the blockchain, but what we want to do is, so in this example that we talked about, there's many, many parties involved, right? So there is the 3 companies, there's Strava, there is the company that's providing GPS, which let's say is Mazi. Google, could be another company. So there's the data producers, which like we talked about the people that are providing the data. There's the data consumer, which is Stanford, which is buying the data. And then there's the user in the middle. Within our system, everybody has accountability and everybody sees what's happening. With Facebook, for example, or Google, you have no idea where your data is bought and sold. Yeah. And then most importantly, as we talked about, because it is all recorded, 2 years down the line, Stanford can access you again and reach you. That is a very, very big revolutionary difference with not only with blockchain, but also with the work that we're doing with Unification.
If people want to contact you about this and explore this, how can they reach you again?
If anybody wants to find out a little bit more, they could get on our website called unification.com, or they could message me myself on Telegram as well at Mazi Sadri, MAZISADRI.
Thank you for listening to Digital to Foot Traffic. Join our mailing list at digitaltofoottraffic.com for more of our digital insights and strategies.
Leave us a review on iTunes or your favorite Android apps and subscribe so we'll show you the second we launch a new episode.